Commander Vex Tholer stood on the bridge of his warship and stared at the small blue planet below. Earth looked peaceful from space. Too peaceful. The swirling white clouds and vast blue oceans reminded him of vacation worlds, not the home of a species that claimed to understand warfare. Vex had fought in wars across 12 different star systems. He had seen the mighty Corvan warriors crush entire fleets with their massive ships. He had watched the swift Delaney fighters dance through space like deadly birds. He had even survived the brutal ground campaigns against the armored Thakari, legions. In his 200 years of military service, Vex thought he had seen every type of warrior the galaxy had to offer. Then the humans made contact. The message had arrived at Galactic Command 3 months ago. It was simple and direct. The humans wanted to join the Galactic Defense Alliance. They offered to share their military knowledge and requested that an observer come to evaluate their capabilities. It was a standard request from a new species. What made it unusual was the confidence in their tone. Most new species approached the Alliance with humble requests for protection or trade agreements. The humans wrote their message like they had something valuable to offer. This intrigued the Alliance Council enough to send Vex, one of their most experienced military observers. Now, looking down at Earth, Vex wondered if this trip was a waste of time. He had studied the preliminary reports during the journey. Humans were small compared to most galactic species. They had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. Their bones broke easily. They lived for less than 100 years, barely, enough time to gain real military experience. They had no thick hide to protect them from energy weapons. Their reflexes were slower than most species. By every measure that mattered in warfare, humans appeared weak. Vex activated his communication system and sent a message to the surface. Within minutes, he received coordinates for a landing site on Earth's moon. The humans called it Luna Base. As his shuttle descended toward the gray surface, Vex noticed something odd. The base was much larger than the reports had suggested. Construction appeared to be ongoing, with new sections being added to the facility. The shuttle touched down in a pressurized hangar bay. Through the viewing port, Vex saw human soldiers waiting for him. They stood at attention in neat rows, but something about their posture seemed different from other military formations he had observed. These humans looked relaxed, almost casual, despite their formal stance. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss. Vex stepped out, his tall frame and 4 arms immediately drawing attention from the human soldiers. He stood nearly 8 feet, tall, with thick gray skin that could deflect most small weapons. His species, the Kethani, were bred for war. Looking at the humans, Vex felt like he was visiting a planet of children. A human approached him. The man was shorter than Vex by 2 feet, with graying hair and weathered skin. He wore a simple uniform with several colorful patches that Vex assumed indicated rank. "Commander Tholer," the human said with a slight smile. "Welcome to Luna Base. I'm General Marcus Reed." Vex was surprised. In most species, only the highest-ranking officers greeted foreign military observers. Yet this general had come personally to meet him. Even more surprising was the human's tone. He spoke to Vex like they were equals, not like a primitive species. Addressing a superior warrior, "General Reed," Vex replied, performing the standard Kethani military greeting by crossing all 4 arms across his chest. "I am honored to observe your military capabilities." Reed nodded but did not attempt to copy the gesture. Instead, he simply said, "Follow me. We have a lot to show you." As they walked through the base corridors, Vex noticed more unusual details. The walls displayed images of human military history, but the scenes looked chaotic and violent. In one image, humans fought each other with primitive metal weapons while standing in deep mud. Another showed humans in strange flying machines shooting at each other in the sky. A third displayed humans fighting in what appeared to be a frozen wasteland. "Interesting artwork," Vex commented. Reed glanced at the images. "Oh, those. Battle. Scenes from our history. World War I, World War II, the Korean War. Just a few of our conflicts." "A few?" Vex was confused. Most species had perhaps 1 or 2 major wars in their entire history. The way Reed spoke suggested humans had many. More. We've been practicing warfare for quite a while, Reed said casually. Actually, we've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. About 5,000 years of continuous conflict, give or take. Vex stopped walking. 5,000 years of warfare? That seemed impossible. Most species fought only when absolutely necessary. Constant warfare would destroy a civilization. Reed noticed Vex had stopped. Something wrong? Your species has been at war for 5,000 years, Vex asked. Reed thought for a moment. Well, not continuously. We do take breaks. Sometimes we have peace for 10 or 20 years at a time. But yes, warfare has been a constant part of human civilization. We've gotten pretty good at it. They resumed walking. Vex's mind raced with questions. How had humanity survived so much internal conflict? Why had they not destroyed themselves? Most importantly, what did this mean for their military capabilities? They entered a large chamber filled with screens and control panels. Human operators sat at various stations, monitoring displays that showed star maps, ship movements, and tactical data. It looked like a military command center, but it was more advanced than anything Vex had expected from such a young, spacefaring civilization. This is our primary operations center, Reed explained. We monitor all activity in the solar system. From here, we also run combat simulations and strategic planning exercises. A woman approached them. She was tall for a human with short brown hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Commander Tholer, this is Captain Lisa Brooks, our Chief Tactical Officer, Reed said. Brooks stepped forward and offered her hand to Vex. He had studied human customs and knew this was called a handshake. He extended one of his 4 hands and gently grasped hers, careful not to crush the delicate human fingers. Captain Brooks has prepared a demonstration for you, Reed continued. A simple combat simulation to show you some basic human tactics. Vex nodded politely. He expected to see standard military exercises similar to those used by other species. Formation movements, weapons practice, perhaps some basic strategy discussions. What he saw next would challenge everything he thought he knew about warfare. The simulation began on the main display screen. It showed 2 groups of human soldiers facing each other in a virtual battlefield. One group was designated as the attacking force, the other as defenders. The scenario was simple. The attackers needed to capture a strategic position held by the defenders. Vex watched as the attacking force advanced in a standard formation. Nothing unusual there. But as they encountered resistance, something strange happened. Instead of continuing with their original plan, the human soldiers began to change their tactics in real time. When their frontal assault failed, they split into smaller groups and attacked from multiple directions. When that proved ineffective, they abandoned direct assault entirely and began using the environment to their advantage, taking cover behind obstacles and using high ground for better firing positions. Most remarkable of all, they did this without stopping to receive new orders from their commanders. Each small group of soldiers seemed to know instinctively what the others were doing and adapted their own actions accordingly. How are they coordinating so effectively? Vex asked. Initiative and adaptability, Brooks replied. We train our soldiers to think for themselves and adapt to changing situations. Rigid doctrine gets you killed. Vex stared at the screen. In his experience, military doctrine was sacred. Soldiers followed established procedures that had been proven effective over generations. The idea of abandoning proven tactics in the middle of battle seemed reckless. Yet the human attackers in the simulation were succeeding. Their constant adaptation and improvisation was overwhelming the defenders, who were using more traditional tactics. This is highly unusual, Vex admitted. Reed smiled. Commander, this is just the beginning. We have a lot more to show you. As they prepared to leave the operations center, Vex realized that his assumptions about human military capabilities might be completely wrong. These small, seemingly fragile beings had survived 5,000 years of constant warfare and had developed tactics unlike anything he had encountered. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vex Tholer felt uncertain about what he was about to discover. The next morning, Captain Brooks led Vex through a different section of Luna Base. The corridors here were lined with more historical displays, but these images looked different from the ones Vex had seen the day before. These pictures showed humans in strange clothing, holding colorful banners and marching together. "What are these images?" Vex asked, stopping in front of a display showing humans crossing a frozen river. "Historical battles," Brooks replied. "That one shows General Washington crossing the Delaware River during our Revolutionary War. The humans were fighting for independence from another human nation." Vex studied the image more carefully. The humans in the picture looked cold and tired, but their faces showed determination. They were fighting other humans. "Most of our wars have been against other humans," Brooks said simply. "We fight for many different reasons: territory, resources, religion, political beliefs, freedom." This confused Vex. In his experience, species fought other species for territory or resources. Those were logical reasons for conflict. But humans seemed to fight wars over ideas. "You fight wars over beliefs?" he asked. "All the time," Brooks said. "Some of our bloodiest conflicts have been over abstract concepts: democracy versus authoritarianism, different religious beliefs, economic systems. We've fought entire wars over whether people should be free or enslaved." They entered a large room filled with chairs facing a massive screen. Brooks gestured for Vex to sit down. "I want to show you something that might help you understand human warfare better," she said. The screen activated, showing a map of Earth. Red markers appeared in various locations across the planet. "This shows major human conflicts over the past century," Brooks explained. "Each red marker represents a significant war or battle." Vex counted the markers. There were dozens of them. Some appeared to overlap in time, suggesting humans had been fighting multiple wars simultaneously. "How many wars has your species fought?" Vex asked. Brooks thought for a moment. "Historians estimate we've had over 15,000 significant conflicts throughout our recorded history. That's not counting smaller battles, skirmishes, or civil wars. 15,000 conflicts." Vex tried to process this number. His own species, the Cathani, had fought perhaps 20 major wars in their entire history spanning 10,000 years. Yet humans, in just 5,000 years, had fought nearly 1,000 times as many battles. "How did your species survive so much warfare?" Vex asked. "We learned from it," Brooks said. "Every defeat taught us something new. Every victory showed us what worked. We've been studying warfare longer than most species have existed." The screen changed to show footage from what Brooks called World War II. Vex watched human armies moving across continents, massive metal machines rolling through destroyed cities, and aircraft filling the skies like swarms of insects. "This war lasted 6 years," Brooks said. "It involved most of the human nations on Earth. Over 70 million humans died." Vex was shocked. 70 million casualties in a single conflict was more than the total population of some entire species. "The scale is enormous," he said. "Scale is something humans understand well," Brooks replied. "When we fight completely. We mobilize entire civilizations for war." The footage changed to show something that made Vex lean forward in his chair. Human soldiers were fighting in a jungle, but they weren't using standard military tactics. They moved in small groups, appearing and disappearing among the trees. They seemed to melt into the environment itself. "What type of warfare is this?" Vex asked. "Guerrilla warfare," Brooks said. "When humans can't win through direct confrontation, we adapt. We use hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and psychological warfare. We make the enemy afraid to move, afraid to sleep, afraid to trust anyone." Vex had never seen anything like it. Most galactic species fought honorable battles with clear battle lines and established rules. This looked more like hunting than warfare. "Is this considered honorable combat among humans?" he asked. Brooks looked at him with a slight smile. "Honor is a luxury we can't always afford. When your survival is at stake, you use whatever tactics work. The only dishonor is in losing." They left the viewing room and walked to another section of the base. Here, Vex heard the sounds of combat training. They entered a large chamber where human soldiers were practicing fighting techniques. A sergeant was instructing a group of young soldiers. He was shorter than most humans Vex had seen, with dark hair and quick movements. Brooks introduced him as Sergeant Danny Torres. "Sergeant Torres is one of our best small unit leaders," Brooks said. "His squad has the highest success rate in combat simulations." Torres approached them and nodded respectfully to Vex. "Commander, would you like to see a training exercise?" Vex agreed, curious to see how humans prepared for combat. Torres called his squad together. 8 human soldiers gathered around him. They looked ordinary, almost unremarkable. Compared to Kethani warriors, they seemed like children playing at war. "We're going to run Scenario 7, Torres announced. "Standard search and rescue mission. You have to extract a wounded friendly from enemy territory. The enemy has superior numbers and better weapons." The soldiers nodded and took their positions. Vex watched as they entered a simulated battlefield created by holographic projectors. The scenario appeared on screens around the chamber, so observers could follow the action. What happened next amazed Vex. The squad encountered their first obstacle, almost immediately. Enemy forces blocked the direct route to their objective. In standard Kethani doctrine, they would either retreat to request reinforcements or attack directly with overwhelming force. Torres's squad did neither. Instead, they split into 3 smaller groups. One group created a distraction to draw enemy attention. The second group found an alternate route through terrain that looked impossible to navigate. The third group waited in ambush for enemy reinforcements. When their planned route was blocked by unexpected obstacles, they didn't hesitate. One soldier used his weapon to blast through a wall. Another soldier climbed over barriers that seemed too high for humans to scale. A third soldier crawled through a drainage tunnel that looked barely wide enough for a human body. "How do they coordinate so well without constant communication?" Vex asked. "Training and trust," Torres replied. "Each soldier knows what the others are thinking because we've practiced together hundreds of times. We don't need orders for every action." The squad reached their objective, but the situation got worse. The wounded soldier they needed to rescue was in a location surrounded by enemies. A direct assault would be suicide. Again, the humans adapted. They used debris to build improvised weapons. They turned pieces of the environment into tools. One soldier created a smokescreen using materials he found on the battlefield. Another soldier rigged an explosive device from training equipment. Most impressively, they used the enemy's own tactics against them. When enemy forces tried to surround them, the human squad turned the trap into an ambush of their own. "This is remarkable," Vex said as the exercise concluded successfully. "They turned a hopeless situation into a victory." "That's what humans do," Brooks said. "We specialize in impossible situations." After the exercise, Vex spoke with Private Jake Miller, one of the youngest soldiers in the squad. "How long have you been training?" Vex asked. 2 years, sir," Miller replied. "But I've been studying military history and tactics since I was a kid." "Most humans do." "Your civilians study warfare?" Miller looked surprised by the question. "Sure. We have books, movies, games, and documentaries about military conflicts. Everyone knows basic tactical principles." Vex realized something disturbing. Human children grew up learning about warfare as entertainment. Their entire culture was built around understanding conflict. As they walked back through the base, Brooks shared more information that shocked Vex. "We don't just study our own military history," she said. "We study everyone else's too. We've analyzed every known galactic species and developed theoretical battle plans for fighting each one." "Including my people? Especially your people," Brooks said matter-of-factly. "The Kethani are formidable warriors. We've spent considerable time studying your tactics and capabilities." Vex felt a chill run through his body. Humans had been preparing to fight wars against species they had never even met. That evening, as Vex reviewed his notes, he realized that his understanding of warfare was too narrow. He had always thought of military conflict in terms of strength, numbers, and superior technology. Humans approached warfare as an intellectual challenge. They treated every battle like a puzzle to be solved, every enemy like a problem to be analyzed and defeated through creativity and adaptation. For a species that looked so weak and fragile, they had developed the most sophisticated understanding, of warfare he had ever encountered, and this was only his second day on Luna Base. On his third day at Luna Base, Vex met Colonel Robert Hayes. The human was older than General Reed, with silver hair and scars on his hands that spoke of real combat experience. Hayes led Vex to a restricted section of the base that required special clearance to enter. "What you've seen so far is basic training," Hayes said as they walked through corridors lined with security sensors. "Today I want to show you the real depth of human warfare." They entered a room that looked like a museum, but darker. The walls were covered with weapons, uniforms, and battle flags from throughout human history. Some items looked ancient, made of metal and wood. Others appeared more modern, crafted from advanced materials Vex didn't recognize. "This is our war memorial," Hayes explained. "Every major human conflict is represented here. We study the past to prepare for the future." Vex approached a display case containing a curved metal blade. The weapon looked primitive, but something about it made him uncomfortable. "That's a samurai sword from ancient Japan," Hayes said. "The humans who carried these weapons trained their entire lives for combat. They developed fighting techniques that turned individual warriors into legends." Hayes moved to another display. "These are Viking battle axes from Northern Europe. The people who used them believed that dying in battle was the highest honor possible. They sailed across oceans just to find worthy enemies to fight." As they walked through the memorial, Vex began to understand something troubling. Human warfare wasn't just about winning battles. It was about perfecting the art of combat itself. Humans had spent thousands of years developing new ways to fight, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to become better warriors. "How many different fighting styles have humans developed?" Vex asked. Hayes thought for a moment. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. Every culture on Earth developed its own unique approach to warfare. We've combined the best techniques from all of them." They stopped at a section dedicated to what Hayes called guerrilla warfare. The displays showed humans fighting in jungles, mountains, deserts, and cities. In every environment, humans had found ways to turn the landscape itself into a weapon. "Traditional galactic warfare follows predictable patterns," Hayes said. "Fleets meet in space, ground forces clash on open battlefields, superior technology wins. Humans don't accept those limitations." A video screen showed human fighters hiding in underground tunnels, emerging to attack enemy forces before disappearing again. Another screen displayed humans fighting in Arctic conditions, using the cold and snow to camouflage their movements. "We can fight anywhere," Hayes continued, "in any environment, under any conditions. We've had battles underwater, in the air, underground, and in the vacuum of space. If there's a place where combat is possible, humans have figured out how to do it." Vex watched footage of humans fighting in a burning city. They moved through smoke and flames like they were walking through a peaceful garden. Their faces showed no fear, only determination. "Most species avoid fighting in dangerous environments," Vex observed. "You seem to prefer them." "Difficult conditions level the playing field," Hayes replied. "When everyone is suffering, victory goes to whoever can endure the most pain and still keep fighting." They moved to a section that made Vex pause. The displays here showed something he had never seen before: humans fighting wars they knew they couldn't win. "This section covers our hopeless battles," Hayes said quietly. "Situations where humans chose to fight even though victory was impossible." The bow. First display showed a small group of humans defending a building against overwhelming odds. The text explained that all the defenders died, but their sacrifice inspired others to continue fighting. "Why would they choose certain death?" Vex asked. "Because some things are more important than survival," Hayes said. "Freedom, justice, protecting innocent people. Humans will die for abstract ideas that other species consider worthless." Another display showed human pilots flying damaged aircraft into enemy ships, destroying both themselves and their targets. The text called it a kamikaze attack. "This is suicide warfare," Vex said, disturbed by what he was seeing. "It's sacrifice warfare," Hayes corrected. "When conventional tactics fail, humans will use their own lives as weapons. Most enemies aren't prepared to fight an opponent who considers death an acceptable cost of victory." They left the memorial and walked to Hayes's office. The room was simple but filled with books, maps, and tactical displays. Hayes poured himself a cup of coffee and offered Vex a drink of water. "I want to show you something that might shock you," Hayes said, activating a holographic display. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were marked with different colors and symbols. "This is our strategic assessment of known galactic civilizations," Hayes explained. "We've studied every species we've encountered and developed theoretical battle plans for potential conflicts." Vex saw his home system marked in blue. When Hayes touched the marker, detailed information appeared showing Cathani military capabilities, typical battle tactics, and potential weaknesses. "You've analyzed my people?" Vex asked. "Thoroughly," Hayes replied. "We've identified 17 different strategies for fighting Cathani forces, depending on the circumstances. We know your ships are heavily armored but slow to maneuver. We know your warriors prefer direct confrontation and become confused by irregular tactics. We know your command structure is rigid and doesn't adapt well to unexpected situations." Vex felt cold. Every analysis was accurate. Humans had studied his people like insects under a microscope. "But we've never even met before," Vex protested. "We've been preparing for first contact with every known species for decades," Hayes said. "We assumed that eventually we might have to fight each one. It's better to be prepared and never need the plans than to be caught unprepared." The display showed more disturbing information. Humans had developed plans for fighting species with superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and even hostile artificial intelligences. "You plan for wars against enemies that don't exist," Vex said. "They don't exist yet," Hayes corrected. "But someday they might. Human military doctrine includes preparing for threats that haven't appeared yet." Hayes touched another control, and the display showed Earth's solar system. Defensive positions were marked around every planet and major asteroid. Supply depots, weapons platforms, and hidden bases created multiple layers of protection. "This is just our home system defense," Hayes said. "We have similar preparations for any colony worlds we establish. Every human settlement is designed to be a fortress if necessary." As they talked, a young soldier entered the office. Hayes introduced him as Private Jake Miller, the same soldier Vex had met during the training exercise. "Miller volunteered for a special demonstration," Hayes said. "Show Commander Tholer your gear, Private." Miller opened the equipment case and began assembling items. Within minutes, he had created what appeared to be a complete survival kit from components that looked ordinary. Standard human military equipment includes tools for extended operations in any environment, Hayes explained. Every soldier carries enough supplies to survive alone for weeks if necessary. Miller demonstrated how his normal uniform could be adapted for different climates. Hidden pockets contained water purification tablets, emergency food, medical supplies, and communication equipment. "Most impressive is this," Miller said, showing Vex a small device. "Emergency shelter generator. It can create a livable environment in hostile conditions for up to 30 days. Your individual soldiers can survive independently," Vex asked. "Every human warrior is trained to operate alone if necessary," Hayes replied. "We don't just fight as units. Each person is a complete military system." Miller packed his equipment and left. Hayes turned back to the galactic display. "What disturbs other species most about human warfare is our endurance," he said. "Most galactic conflicts last days or weeks. Human wars can continue for years, decades, even generations." The display showed a timeline of Earth's longest conflicts. Some wars had lasted over a century, with multiple generations of families participating in the same ongoing battle. "We don't just fight until we get tired," Hayes continued. "We fight until the enemy gives up, no matter how long that takes. Time is a weapon for us." As evening approached, Vex realized that human warfare was more complex and terrifying than he had imagined. These seemingly fragile beings had developed military thinking that went far beyond simple combat tactics. They treated warfare as a comprehensive science that included psychology, logistics, technology, and philosophy. Most disturbing of all was their preparation. Humans didn't just fight wars when they happened. They spent their peaceful time studying, every aspect of potential conflicts, preparing for battles that might never occur. Tomorrow I want to show you our ultimate military capability, Hayes said as they prepared to leave. The weapons we've developed that we hope we'll never have to use. Vex spent another sleepless night reviewing his notes. Each day revealed new depths to human military thinking that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. He was beginning to understand why the humans had been so confident in their initial message to the Galactic Alliance. They weren't asking for protection or seeking guidance. They were announcing their arrival as the galaxy's newest apex predators. General Reed met Vex early on the fourth morning. The human leader looked more serious than usual, and he carried a data pad with classified markings. Today we're going to discuss something that most alien observers never get to see, Reed said as they walked through the deepest levels of Luna Base, our ultimate military preparations. They entered a chamber that required multiple security clearances. Inside, Vex saw the largest strategic display he had ever encountered. The holographic projection filled the entire room, showing not just Earth's solar system, but dozens of nearby star systems in perfect detail. This is the Human Strategic Command Center, Reed explained. From here, we can coordinate military operations across multiple star systems simultaneously. Dr. Emily Watson was waiting for them. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an intensity that reminded Vex of a predator studying prey. Reed introduced her as the chief military psychologist and strategic planner. Dr. Watson specializes in understanding how different species think and fight, Reed said. She's developed psychological profiles for every known galactic civilization. Watson activated a section of the display showing detailed analyses of dozens of alien species. Each profile included not just military capabilities, but psychological assessments, cultural weaknesses, and predicted behavioral patterns in combat. Traditional warfare focuses on destroying enemy forces, Watson explained. Human warfare focuses on destroying enemy will to fight. We've learned that breaking an opponent's spirit is more effective than breaking their weapons. Vex studied his own species profile. The psychological analysis was disturbingly accurate. It identified Cathani pride as a primary weakness and suggested tactics for exploiting their rigid military traditions. You study the minds of your enemies, Vex said. We study the minds of potential enemies, Watson corrected. There's a difference. We hope to never fight most of these species, but if we do, we'll understand them better than they understand themselves. Reed led them to another section of the command center. Here, human officers worked at stations monitoring communications across the galaxy. They were listening to diplomatic transmissions, trade negotiations, and military communications from dozens of different species. We monitor galactic communications constantly, Reed explained. Not to spy, but to understand the political situation. Most wars start with diplomatic failures. We watch for signs of growing tensions that might lead to conflict. One of the officers reported to Reed. Vex heard him mention increased military activity in a distant star system, where two species had been having territorial disputes. Should we prepare intervention protocols? The officer asked. Not yet, Reed replied. But increase monitoring and prepare diplomatic options. If fighting starts, we want to be ready to help end it quickly. Vex realized that humans weren't just preparing to fight wars. They were actively working to prevent unnecessary conflicts through early intervention and diplomacy. Most species only pay attention to galactic politics when it affects them directly, Watson observed. Humans monitor everything because we understand that distant conflicts can eventually reach us. They moved to a section labeled Total War Capabilities. Here, Reed showed Vex something that shocked him more than anything he had seen so far. This displays Earth's complete military mobilization potential, Reed said. The holographic projection showed Earth transforming. Civilian factories converted to weapons production. Commercial spacecraft retrofitted for military use. Entire cities reorganized to support war efforts. The transformation was complete and terrifying. In a crisis, we can convert our entire civilization into a military force within 6 months, Reed explained. Every human becomes part of the war effort. Every resource gets directed toward victory. Vex watched projections showing Earth's population of 8 billion humans organized for total warfare. Farmers became logistics specialists. Engineers became weapons designers. Teachers became military trainers. Even children contributed by maintaining food production and basic services. Most species can only mobilize their military castes for war, Vex said. You mobilize your entire civilization. When survival is at stake, every human becomes a warrior, Reed replied. We don't have separate civilian and military populations during wartime. We have warriors and warriors in training. Watson activated another display showing human war production capabilities. The numbers were staggering. In full war mode, humanity could produce more weapons, ships, and supplies than most entire galactic civilizations could use. But the most important thing we produce during wartime isn't weapons, Watson said. It's more warriors. Human population grows during conflicts, not shrinks. We have more children during wars, not fewer. This contradicted everything Vex knew about warfare. Most species saw their populations decline during conflicts as casualties mounted and resources became scarce. War makes your species stronger? He asked. Adversity makes humans stronger, Reed corrected. We thrive under pressure. Our greatest technological advances happen during wartime. Our most heroic individuals emerge during crises. War doesn't weaken humanity. It reveals our true strength. They walked to the most classified section of the command center. Here, Reed showed Vex displays that made his blood run cold. These are our ultimate deterrent weapons, Reed said quietly. The display showed weapons capable of destroying entire planets, not just making them uninhabitable, but actually breaking them apart into asteroids and debris. Why would you create such things? Vex asked, horrified. Because sometimes the only way to prevent a war is to make the cost of fighting too high to consider, Reed replied. These weapons aren't meant to be used. They're meant to make enemies think twice before attacking us. Watson pointed to another set of weapons specifications. We've also developed biological weapons that could eliminate entire species, viruses that could shut down technological civilizations, and nanomachines that could consume whole ecosystems. But you would destroy yourselves too, Vex protested. Maybe, Reed said calmly. But our enemies would definitely be destroyed. That's what makes it an effective deterrent. No rational opponent wants to fight a war where victory means mutual annihilation. The concept was insane. Humans had created weapons that could end all life in the galaxy, not as conquest tools, but as suicide devices to prevent conquest by others. This is called mutually assured destruction, Watson explained. If someone tries to destroy humanity, we'll make sure they're destroyed too, even if it kills us. Most species aren't willing to pay that price for victory. Reed led Vex to a final display showing something called contingency plans. These were detailed preparations for scenarios that seemed impossible. We have plans for fighting wars against time travelers, hostile artificial intelligences, interdimensional invaders, and species that haven't been discovered yet, Reed explained. We even have plans for fighting wars against versions of ourselves, from alternate realities. Vex stared at the display. Humans had spent time and resources preparing for threats that existed only in theory. Do you really believe you'll face such enemies? He asked. Probably not, Reed admitted. But if we do face them, we'll be ready. The cost of being wrong is too high to take chances. As they prepared to leave the command center, Reed shared one final piece of information. Everything you've seen represents our defensive preparations, he said. We have offensive capabilities too, but we hope you'll never need to see them. That evening, Vex sat in his quarters trying to process everything he had learned. Humans didn't just fight wars. They had made warfare into a comprehensive philosophy that shaped their entire civilization. They prepared for conflicts that might never happen against enemies that might not exist. They created weapons they hoped never to use. They developed strategies for scenarios that seemed impossible. Most terrifying of all, they had turned their apparent weaknesses into strategic advantages. Their short lifespans made them desperate and unpredictable. Their physical fragility forced them to be creative and adaptive. Their emotional nature made them willing to fight for abstract principles that logical species would abandon. Vex realized that his mission to evaluate human military capabilities had revealed something far more significant. Humanity wasn't just another species joining the galactic community. They were a completely new type of civilization that approached existence itself as a form of warfare. Tomorrow would bring the ultimate test of everything he had learned about human combat capabilities. A real crisis was approaching, and Vex would finally see if human theories translated into effective action. He went to sleep, hoping he would never have to find out how dangerous humans could be when they stopped talking about war and started fighting it. Vex was awakened by emergency alarms echoing through Luna Base. Red lights flashed in the corridors as human personnel ran to their duty stations. Within minutes, General Reed appeared at his quarters. "Commander Tholer, we have a situation," Reed said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "A hostile fleet has entered our solar system. You're about to see human warfare in action." They rushed to the command center, where human officers worked frantically at their stations. The main display showed 12 large alien warships approaching Earth. Vex recognized the ship designs immediately. "Verkari raiders," he said. "They're a species of space pirates, extremely aggressive and well-armed." "We know," Captain Brooks replied from her position at the tactical station. "We've been monitoring their movements for weeks. They think they found an easy target." Vex watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Verkari fleet was massive compared to the human ships defending Earth. Each Verkari warship was 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel. "You're outnumbered and outgunned," Vex observed. "Standard military doctrine would suggest requesting help from the Galactic Alliance." Reed smiled grimly. "Standard military doctrine doesn't account for human tactics." The human defensive fleet moved into position. Vex counted only 8 ships against 12 enemy vessels. The odds looked hopeless. "Admiral Chen, you have command," Reed announced into his communication device. "Understood, General," came the reply from the fleet commander. "Initiating Operation Rabbit Hole." Vex had never heard of that operation name. "What is Rabbit Hole?" "You'll see," Brooks said, monitoring multiple displays simultaneously. The Verkari fleet approached Earth in a standard attack formation. Their ships were heavily armored and bristling with weapons. They transmitted a surrender demand, threatening to destroy all human settlements if Earth didn't submit immediately. The human response surprised Vex. "Verkari fleet, this is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Force," came the broadcast. "We surrender unconditionally. We're transmitting our surrender codes now." Vex stared at Reed in shock. "You're surrendering? Watch carefully," Reed replied. The human fleet powered down their weapons and moved into a surrender formation. They began broadcasting what appeared to be military codes and defensive positions. The Verkari ships moved closer, preparing to accept the human capitulation. Then something impossible happened. The surrendering human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But instead of being destroyed, they reappeared in completely different positions around the Verkari fleet. "Holographic decoys," Brooks explained. "The ships the Verkari saw were fake projections. Our real fleet has been hiding behind Earth's moon." The true human fleet emerged from concealment and attacked the Verkari ships from behind. But their tactics were unlike anything Vex had ever seen. Instead of exchanging fire in a traditional space battle, the human ships moved in seemingly random patterns. They avoided direct confrontation, darting in to attack weak points before disappearing again. "They're using hit-and-run tactics in space," Vex said, amazed. "Guerrilla warfare adapted for naval combat," Reed confirmed. "We don't fight fair when survival is at stake." The Verkari fleet tried to respond, but their larger ships were too slow to track the fast-moving human vessels. Every time they turned to face one attacker, 2 more appeared from different directions. But the most shocking tactic was yet to come. "Admiral Chen, initiate Phase 2, Reed ordered. "Copy that, General. All ships begin ramming protocol." Vex watched in horror as human ships began deliberately colliding with Verkari vessels. But these weren't suicide attacks. At the last second, before impact, the human crews transported away, leaving their ships to crash into enemy targets as unmanned projectiles. "You're using your own ships as missiles," Vex said. Every human ship is designed to be expendable, Brooks replied. We value human lives more than hardware. Ships can be replaced, experienced crews cannot. The battle continued with increasing intensity. Vakari ships found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow conventional rules. Human forces appeared and disappeared unpredictably. They used deception, misdirection, and tactics that seemed to defy logic. Most disturbing was the human response to casualties. When one of their ships was damaged, the crew didn't retreat. Instead, they turned their damaged vessel into a weapon, ramming it into the nearest enemy ship while the crew escaped in small pods. Your people fight like they have nothing to lose, Vex observed. We fight like we have everything to protect, Reed corrected. The tide of battle began to turn. The Vakari fleet, despite their superior numbers and firepower, was being systematically destroyed by human tactics they couldn't understand or counter. This is Vakari Fleet Commander, came a transmission from the enemy. We demand honorable combat according to galactic warfare conventions. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast throughout the system. There is no honor in attacking innocent civilians. You want honorable combat? Go find someone else to fight. The human fleet intensified their attacks. They targeted Vakari engines, leaving enemy ships stranded. They attacked communication systems, isolating each enemy vessel. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting images of destroyed Vakari ships to demoralize the remaining crews. How are they so effective? Vex asked. Dr. Watson joined them at the command center. We studied Vakari psychology and tactics for months, she explained. We know they depend on intimidation and superior firepower. When those advantages are removed, they become confused and ineffective. The battle's final phase was the most impressive. The remaining Vakari ships tried to retreat, but they found their escape routes blocked by human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. We placed stealth mines throughout the system weeks ago, Brooks explained. Every escape route is covered. They can surrender or be destroyed. The Vakari fleet surrendered, but the real demonstration of human warfare was just beginning. Admiral Chen, initiate boarding operations, Reed ordered. Vex watched as human soldiers transferred to the Vakari ships. This was where he expected to see human limitations exposed. Vakari warriors were larger and stronger than humans. In close combat, they should have had every advantage. Instead, Vex witnessed the most effective close-quarters fighting he had ever seen. The humans didn't fight as individuals. They moved like a single organism, each soldier covering the others, creating overlapping fields of fire and mutual protection. When Vakari warriors tried to use their size and strength advantages, they found themselves surrounded and overwhelmed by coordinated human teams. Our soldiers train together until they can anticipate each other's actions, Captain Brooks explained. They fight as a unit, not as individuals. Sergeant Torres led one of the boarding teams. Vex watched him turn the interior of a Vakari ship into a battlefield that favored human tactics. The humans used the ship's own corridors and rooms as weapons, creating choke points and ambush sites. When conventional weapons proved insufficient, the human soldiers improvised. They used maintenance equipment as weapons. They turned the ship's own systems against the crew. They even used pieces of furniture as shields and clubs. This is incredible, Vex said. They're turning everything into a weapon. That's what humans do, Reed replied. We adapt any environment to our advantage. The most shocking moment came when Torres's team encountered a group of Vakari warriors in the ship's main corridor. Instead of attacking directly, the humans used the ship's artificial gravity system against their enemies. They shut off gravity in strategic sections, causing the heavier Vakari warriors to float helplessly, while the humans, trained for zero-gravity combat, moved freely. Your species prepares for fighting in every possible condition, Vex observed. We prepare for fighting in every impossible condition too, Reed said. The battle ended with complete human victory. 12 Vakari ships had been captured or destroyed. Human casualties were minimal. The entire engagement lasted less than 6 hours. But what impressed Vex most wasn't the victory itself. It was what the humans did afterward. Instead of executing the captured Vakari warriors or selling them into slavery, The humans provided medical treatment for the wounded and offered the survivors a choice. They could be returned to their own territory, or they could remain in human space and help establish peaceful relations between the two species. You show mercy to enemies who showed you none, Vex said. Mercy is a form of warfare too, Dr. Watson explained. Treating defeated enemies makes other potential opponents more likely to surrender instead of fighting to the death. As the crisis ended, Vex realized he had witnessed something unprecedented. Humans had fought a space battle using tactics adapted from thousands of years of ground warfare. They had combined deception, psychology, improvisation, and ruthless efficiency into a form of combat that was both terrifying and effective. Most importantly, they had turned their apparent weaknesses into decisive advantages. Their willingness to sacrifice ships had confused enemies who valued hardware over personnel. Their adaptability had overcome superior firepower. Their unconventional thinking had defeated a more experienced foe. Tomorrow we'll discuss what you've learned, Reed said as they left the command center. I think you're beginning to understand what human warfare really means. Vex spent the night reviewing footage of the battle. Every time he watched it, he discovered new details that demonstrated the complexity and sophistication of human military thinking. He was finally beginning to understand why humans had been so confident in their message to the Galactic Alliance. They weren't asking to join the galactic community as junior partners. They were announcing their arrival as its new dominant military force. On his final day at Luna Base, Vex sat with General Reed in a quiet observation deck overlooking Earth. The blue planet looked peaceful again, showing no signs of the battle that had occurred just hours before. Human repair crews were already working to fix any damage to their defensive systems. What did you learn from yesterday's battle? Reed asked. Vex thought carefully before answering. I learned that human warfare isn't about fighting. It's about communicating. Reed nodded approvingly. Explain that thought. Every action your forces took sent a message, Vex said. The fake surrender told the Vrikari that humans are unpredictable. The hit-and-run tactics said that you won't fight by anyone else's rules. The boarding actions prove that you can win even in close combat where you should be disadvantaged. And what was the overall message? Vex stared at Earth while he formulated his answer. That attacking humanity will cost more than any victory could be worth. The Vrikari didn't just lose a battle. They learned that fighting humans means facing an enemy that will use any tactic, adapt to any situation, and never give up. Exactly, Reed said. Military victory isn't our goal. Our goal is to make warfare so costly and unpredictable that potential enemies choose peace instead. Dr. Watson joined them, carrying a final report for Vex to review. It contained detailed analyses of human military capabilities that she was authorized to share with the Galactic Alliance. This report will shock the Alliance Council, she said. Most species develop military technology and tactics gradually over time. Humans have compressed thousands of years of military evolution into our space age. Vex read through the report, finding new surprises on every page. Humans had developed weapons that could function in any environment. Their soldiers were trained to fight in conditions that would kill most other species. Their ships could be reconfigured for different mission types within hours. Most impressive was their logistics system. Human military forces could operate independently for months without resupply. Every ship, base, and unit was designed to be self-sufficient when necessary. How did your species develop such comprehensive military capabilities? Vex asked. Necessity, Reed replied simply. We've been fighting for survival since our species began. Every enemy we've faced has taught us something new. Every defeat has made us stronger. Watson added more context. Humans don't just study military history as academic exercise. We treat every past conflict as a learning opportunity. Our children grow up playing games that teach tactical thinking. Our entertainment includes warfare scenarios that help civilians understand military concepts. Your entire culture is built around understanding conflict, Vex observed. Our entire culture is built around preventing unnecessary conflict through strength, Reed corrected. We've learned that the best way to avoid war is to be so formidable that no one wants to fight. As they talked, Captain Brooks arrived with news from Earth's government. The Galactic Alliance had received preliminary reports about the Vakari battle and wanted immediate details about human military capabilities. "They're concerned," Brooks reported. "Several member species are questioning whether humanity should be admitted to the Alliance. They're worried about our military potential." Reed wasn't surprised. Fear is a natural response to the unknown. But fear can become respect with time and proper understanding. Vex realized this was the moment to share his conclusions. "General Reed, I need to be honest about my recommendations to the Alliance Council." "I'm listening." "I'm going to recommend that humanity be offered immediate full membership with complete military partnership status," Vex said. "But I'm also going to warn them never to fight against you." Reed looked curious. "Why full partnership status?" "Because humanity has already surpassed most Alliance species in military capability," Vex explained. "Your tactics, technology, and strategic thinking are more advanced than civilizations that have existed for millions of years. The Alliance needs human military expertise more than humanity needs Alliance protection." Watson smiled. "You understand the situation clearly. But why warn them against fighting us?" Reed asked. Vex thought about everything he had witnessed over the past week. "Because human warfare operates on principles that other species can't comprehend. You don't just fight to win battles. You fight to change how your enemies think about conflict itself." He activated a portable display and showed his own analysis of human military philosophy. "Most species see warfare as a tool for achieving specific objectives," Vex explained. "Humans see warfare as a form of communication that reshapes the strategic environment. Every battle you fight changes how potential enemies view the cost of conflict." Reed studied the analysis. "You've learned more about us in 1 week than some species learn in decades of contact." "That's because you wanted me to learn," Vex replied. "This entire week was a demonstration designed to communicate human capabilities to the galactic community. You could have hidden your true military potential, but instead you revealed it deliberately." "Why do you think we did that?" Vex had been considering this question since the first day. "Because hiding your strength would have led to misunderstandings and unnecessary conflicts. By showing me exactly what humanity is capable of, you ensure that the Alliance Council will make informed decisions about future relations." Watson nodded. "That's exactly right. We prefer honest relationships based on mutual understanding rather than relationships based on false assumptions." As they prepared for Vex's departure, Reed shared one final piece of information. "Everything you've seen represents our defensive capabilities," he said. "We have offensive systems that we hope you'll never need to learn about. But they exist, and they're more advanced than anything we've shown you." This didn't surprise Vex. If humans had developed such sophisticated defensive strategies, their offensive capabilities would be equally impressive. "I understand," he replied. "The message is clear. Humanity wants peaceful relations with the galactic community, but you're prepared for any alternative." "Peace through strength," Reed confirmed. "It's an ancient human concept that has served us well." As Vex boarded his shuttle for the return journey to Alliance space, he reflected on how much his understanding had changed. He had arrived expecting to evaluate a primitive species asking for protection. Instead, he had discovered a civilization that had evolved warfare into a comprehensive art form. Humans didn't just fight battles. They fought ideas. They didn't just defeat enemies. They convinced potential opponents that conflict was too costly to consider. They didn't just win wars. They prevented future wars through the demonstration of overwhelming capability, combined with reasonable restraint. Most importantly, they had shown that apparent weakness could become strategic strength. Their physical limitations had forced them to develop mental advantages. Their short lifespans had made them desperate enough to innovate constantly. Their emotional nature had given them the courage to fight for abstract principles that logical species would abandon. During the long flight back to Alliance headquarters, Vex prepared his final report. The document would reshape galactic politics by introducing a new type of civilization to the interstellar community.